I want to talk for just a few minutes about one of the spiritual practices that has become really important to me in my rule of life as a church planner and just as a follower of Christ in general. And that's the practice of solitude. Solitude is a foundational discipline for a number of reasons. It creates space where we're able to hear from God. It creates space where we're able to sort of look within and get a handle on what's going on in us and how God might be working in us at any given season. Solitude and silence is absolutely essential if we're going to practice lament in times of heaviness and sorrow. It's essential if we're going to lean into self-awareness and be able to honestly look at where we're at in any given season. For me, the way that I practice solitude and silence is sort of on a rhythm. I have daily and monthly and annual rhythms of solitude. The daily rhythm is pretty simple. I get up early each morning before my kids do. That's an important part of the silence part of solitude. And I get up and I have a cup of coffee. I sit at my kitchen table and look out the window as the sun's coming up and have some time with God. I like to journal. I'm not a big journaler, but I do typically take some notes as I pray and as I read. I like to have an open Bible there with me. It helps me listen to God even as I'm in prayer, and then of course just the study of the scriptures, reading and letting that get into me. At times I practice different types of meditation in the scripture as well. Lectio Divina and Ignatian meditation are methods that work well for me. And then a lot of the time I sort of do an old-fashioned Bible study. I just read and digest what's there and ask God to speak to me through it. But that part of my day is so important. I find that even just taking 15, 20 minutes more if I can, but just a brief time of solitude in the morning to be in God's presence is so important for my spiritual formation. Similarly, I take a more extended time of solitude once a month. So I have a little notification that pops up in my calendar, the first day of the month, that says, when is your day of solitude? And I look at the month and figure out which week is going to work best for me to schedule this in. I put it on the calendar, and that helps me stick to it and plan other things around it, rather than the other way around. When I used to try to plan for it on the fly, it would never seem to happen. So I've learned that I do better if I put this on the calendar in advance. On my day of solitude, I typically take about half a day to go somewhere with some beauty. I live close enough to the beach that that's an option. I live almost close enough to the mountains that that's an option. It is if I put in a little extra effort. But to go somewhere that's quiet, to go somewhere where I can see God's beauty in nature is important to me too. And to go to a place where I won't have people that I know coming to me and interacting with me. This is time that I need to be in God's presence alone. During that time, I turn off my cell phone, a discipline that I probably need to do more often than just on those days, but I put the phone away and try to be fully present to God in those moments. In those days, I like to select a portion of scripture to read. Very often, for me, it's the pastoral letters. I'll read through 1st or 2nd Timothy or Titus, sometimes in several different translations, and just ask God to speak to me through those texts. And I take notes on what God seems to be saying to me. I find that these are some of the most significant times for God to work things out in me that have been pent up. Anxieties, distractions, discouragements. These things most often get worked out in the context of solitude. A friend actually earlier today asked me a question that we both kind of laughed about. He was asking, did you become kind of this person who others experience as calm because you practice solitude, or were you drawn to solitude because you're kind of a calm person? And I'm not sure which exactly came first, the chicken or the egg, but I can tell you that I've been in this practice of daily and monthly and yearly solitude for almost 20 years now. And 20 years ago, I would have told you that one of my besetting sins was anger. Now when I say that kind of thing in front of my church, they chuckle because it's hard for them to see that that was a part of me. I know that God has met me in solitude in significant ways, and it has changed me. It has, I'd like to think, brought more of the grace and peace of Christ into my life in a way that others are able to experience as well. In addition to a daily rhythm and a monthly rhythm of solitude, once a year I try to do a more extended time of solitude also and take a 24 to 36 hour prayer retreat. We live a couple hours away from a space where there's several Christian retreat centers, and these ones near us, and I know most Christian retreat centers will offer something like this, are happy in off times to let pastors come and use their space. So very often I'll go to the mountains and I'll go to a retreat center and stay there for 24 hours or more. And really it's the same pattern as my monthly day of solitude, only longer. It affords me a little more time to maybe nap in God's presence too. This too is spiritual. To go for a run. I love running and praying. It's something that works well for me. And all in all, just to have some additional space to be in God's presence, to let Him speak to me, and allow Him to do the work in me that He's wanting to do at that given time.